The desert wind tasted
Take
like
this.
copper
It
and
will help.
ash. Sergeant
is it?
Cade Merrick pressed his back
Trust
against
me.
the twisted metal skeleton of what used to be a transport crawler. His combat fatigues, once desert tan, were now stained black with soot and darker things he refused to think about. The fabric clung to his chest with each ragged breath. Around him, crimson wastes lived up to its name. The rust-colored sand had turned to glass in patches where plasma fire had struck. Bodies lay scattered across the dunes, human and Alari alike, frozen in their final moments of combat. The acrid smell of ozone mixed with the metallic tang of blood. Somewhere in the distance, ammunition cooked off with hollow pops that echoed across the wasteland. Cade checked his rifle. 32% charge. Not ideal, but enough to get back to friendly territory if he moved smart and stayed low. If he could find friendly territory. His helmet display flickered damage during the retreat. Static hissed where his squad's biosignatures should have been. One by one, those green dots had winked out during the chaotic withdrawal. Now there was only his own heartbeat pulsing in the corner of his vision like an accusation. Still alive, still moving, still leaving others behind. He forced the thought down and started moving. The sun hung low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the battlefield. Two moons rose in the purpling sky, pale crescents that seemed to watch his lonely trek with indifferent eyes. Cade had been fighting on this godforsaken planet for 8 months. Before that, 3 other worlds just like it. Before that, tours on stations and ships whose names had blurred together into one continuous deployment. 12 years of service, 12 years of following orders, and 4 years since the order that had broken something fundamental inside him. The memory surfaced unbidden, sharp and cruel. His brother Elias's voice crackling over the comm. "Cade, they're everywhere. We need extraction now." And then the response from Command, cold and final. "Negative. All units fall back to Rally Point Delta. That is a direct order." Cade had followed that order. Elias had been captured. The Merrick family oath passed down from their grandfather, who'd served in conflicts most people had forgotten, was simple. Never abandon blood. Never leave family behind. Cade had broken that oath. A sound pulled him from the spiral of memory. Faint but distinct. A grown human in its pain, but with an undertone that marked it as other. Alari vocal cords produced harmonics that human throats couldn't match even in agony. His training kicked in before conscious thought. Weapon up, scan the terrain, identify the threat. There, behind a chunk of wreckage that might have been part of a hover tank, something moved. Cade approached with the careful steps of a man who'd survived too many ambushes to rush. His boots made soft crunching sounds on the crystallized sand. The wreckage cast a triangular shadow in the fading light, and within that shadow, something gleamed. Not armor. Skin. The Alari warrior lay in a crater of her own, making pale skin almost luminescent in the dusk. Her combat suit, a form-fitting black affair, designed more for mobility than protection, was torn and scorched. But Cade's eyes locked on the damage below her knees. Both legs ended in cauterized stumps. Plasma mine, his medic's brain cataloged automatically. Anti-personnel type. Designed to maim rather than kill. The Alari used them to slow enemy advances, create casualties that required resources to evacuate. Cruel but effective. The warrior's eyes opened. They were the color of winter ice, pale blue, with an inner light that seemed to glow. Those eyes fixed on Cade with an intensity that made him forget for just a moment that she was legless and bleeding out in the sand. Her hand moved toward a sidearm that wasn't there. The gesture sent fresh pain across her face, visible even through the stoic mask she tried to maintain. Her silver-white hair, matted with blood and dust, framed features that were almost human but not quite. Too sharp, too symmetrical, too perfect in a way that fell into the uncanny valley. Cade kept his rifle trained on her center mass. Standard procedure. Never trust a downed enemy. She said something in her native tongue, musical and harsh at the same time. His helmet's damaged translator caught fragments. Leave. Dignity. Warriors. "I don't understand," Cade said, his voice rough from smoke and screaming orders that no one had been alive to follow. The warrior switched to standard, her accent thick but comprehensible. "Kill me or leave human. I require no pity from your kind." Cade should have left. Every regulation, every hour of training, every survival instinct screamed at him to turn around and move toward the evacuation point. She was the enemy. She was dying. She wasn't his problem. But he'd been a combat medic for 8 years before they had handed him a rifle and told him to kill instead of save. Old habits died hard. He lowered his weapon slightly and stepped closer. That's when he saw it. The armor plating on her right shoulder bore distinctive markings. Not rank insignia. Something else. a unit identifier etched in the flowing script the Alari used, and burned into the metal of a scar that could only have come from a specific type of Terran incendiary grenade. Cade's heart went cold. He knew that mark, had seen it in after-action reports, had memorized every detail of the battle that had taken his brother. This warrior had been there. More than that, the shoulder scarring marked her as the officer who'd commanded the Alari forces during that ambush 4 years ago. The officer who'd given the order to take prisoners. The officer responsible for Elias being dragged away into the night, screaming Cade's name while Cade followed orders and retreated. His finger tightened on the trigger. One squeeze. That's all it would take. Justice for Elias. Revenge for every nightmare that had haunted Cade since that day. The warrior saw the recognition in his eyes. Her lips curved into something that might have been a smile or a sneer. "You know me," she said, not a question. "Good. Then you understand this is deserved." Cade's hands shook. The rifle's targeting reticle danced across her chest. "The ambush," he forced out. 4 years ago, Talon Ridge." She didn't flinch. "I remember. We took 17 prisoners that day." Her ice-blue eyes held his. "Did you lose someone?" "My brother." The words hung in the air between them like smoke. For a long moment, neither spoke. The wind picked up, sending sand skittering across the warrior's ruined legs. She didn't look down, didn't show pain, just kept those unnerving eyes locked on Cade's face. "Then do it," she said quietly. "Take your revenge, or leave me to the desert. Either way, I die knowing my duty was fulfilled." Cade's mind raced. Every fiber of his being wanted to pull the trigger, wanted to watch the light fade from those eyes, wanted to feel something other than the crushing weight of guilt he'd carried for 4 years. But a small voice in the back of his head, the voice that sounded like his younger brother during better times, asked a different question. What would Elias want you to do? Elias, who'd become a medic because he believed in saving lives, not taking them. Elias, who'd been captured trying to help a wounded squad mate instead of running. Elias, who'd always been the better man. Cade lowered his rifle. "What's your name?" he asked. The warrior stared at him like he'd spoken in an alien language. "What, your name? If I'm going to save your life, seems only polite." She barked out a laugh that turned into a cough. "You are insane. I am Lissa Tharv, an officer of the Silver Blade Legion, and you cannot save me. My people have withdrawn. They believe me dead. Even if you tried, I would die before you reached your lines." Cade swung his pack off his shoulders and knelt beside her, keeping his rifle within reach. "Yeah, well, I've been told I have a problem with accepting the inevitable." He pulled out his medical kit, compact but well-stocked. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, checking vitals, assessing damage. The stumps were already cauterized, which was good. No active bleeding. But shock and infection would kill her within hours without intervention. "Why?" Lissa asked, and for the first time there was something in her voice besides pride and pain. Confusion. Maybe even curiosity. Cade met her eyes as he prepared an injection of Combat Nanite's military-grade healing technology that would stabilize her at the cellular level. "Because I need to know where they took the prisoners from Talon Ridge," he said. "The truth. Not mercy, not compassion. Pure selfish need. Because my brother was one of them, and you're going to tell me where he is." Understanding flashed across Lissa's face, then something darker. Something that looked almost like regret. "The prisoners from that battle were sent to processing centers," she said. "I do not know which one. I followed my orders and moved to the next engagement." "Then you're going to help me find out," Cade said, pressing the injector against her neck. "Because if you die here, I've got nothing. And if you help me find my brother, I'll get you back to your people alive." The nanites hissed into her bloodstream. Lissa's eyes widened as the technology started to work, knitting cellular damage, fighting off infection, stabilizing her system. "You are a fool," she whispered. "Not the first time I've heard that." Cade stood and looked around. The battlefield was empty now, the living long gone. Just corpses and wreckage, and 2 enemies making a deal that would probably get them both killed. He bent and scooped Lissa into his arms. She was lighter than he expected, her Alari physiology less dense than human. The stumps of her legs hung uselessly, a constant reminder of what she'd lost. "Where are we going?" she asked as he started walking. "There's an old research station about 3 clicks north, abandoned during the early days of the war. If we're lucky, it'll have shelter and maybe some equipment we can use. And if we're not lucky, then we die in the desert instead of on this battlefield. At least it'll be a change of scenery." Lissa made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You have a strange sense of humor for a human." Yeah, well, you get shot at enough times you either learn to laugh or you eat your sidearm. They moved in silence after that, Cade's boots crunching across the crystallized sand while the twin moons climbed higher in the darkening sky. His helmet display was completely dead, now the last flicker of power finally giving out. No nav system, no comm, just his sense of direction and the faint outline of structures on the horizon. The weight in his arms was constant, a reminder of the choice he'd made. A choice that violated every protocol, every regulation, every survival instinct. But also somehow the first choice in 4 years that felt right. They'd gone maybe half a click when Lissa spoke again. The prisoners from Talon Ridge were not harmed, she said quietly. I made certain of that. It was against my orders, but I refused to allow torture. For what small worth that information holds. Cade kept walking, but something in his chest loosened slightly. Why, Purpa? Because I am a warrior, not a butcher. There is a difference, though war makes many forget. Another 100 meters passed beneath Cade's boots. They made me leave him, Cade said, the words coming out before he could stop them. Command ordered a full retreat. I followed orders, left my brother behind. And you have carried that guilt ever since. Wouldn't you too? Lissa was quiet for a long moment. Yes, she finally said. I would. The research station materialized out of the gloom like a ghost. Angular architecture half buried by years of wind-blown sand, the geometric precision marking it as pre-war construction. Before the politics and the territory disputes had escalated into open conflict. Before Crimson Waste had earned its name. Cade found an entrance that was only partially collapsed and picked his way through, carefully, his rifle's light cutting through the darkness. Inside, the air was stale but breathable. Emergency lighting flickered to life as his movement triggered ancient sensors, casting everything in sickly green. He set Lissa down on a relatively clean section of floor in what looked like a medical bay. The room was surprisingly intact, equipment covered in dust but still present. Examination tables, diagnostic scanners, and in the corner a large machine that made Cade's heart skip, a military-grade cybernetic fabrication unit. Is that what I think it is? Lissa asked, following his gaze. Yeah, battlefield prosthetics station. They used to deploy these at major engagements, fabricate replacement limbs for wounded soldiers on site. Cade moved closer, checking the power cells. Still charged, miracle of pre-war engineering. I can make you new legs. Lissa's expression was unreadable. Alari do not use prosthetics. We believe in natural perfection. Augmentation is considered, she searched for the word, weakness. Good thing you're not with your people right now then. Cade started activating the system, watching screens come to life one by one. This isn't some cosmetic upgrade. This is function, mobility, survival. I will be seen as corrupted, impure. You'll be alive to be seen as anything at all. Cade pulled up the fabrication database and started inputting parameters. Height, weight, muscle density. The system would custom build prosthetics matched to her physiology. But then he saw the warning label flash on the screen. Neural interface required for optimal functionality. His finger hovered over the confirmation button. Neural interfaces created a direct connection between the prosthetic and the user's nervous system. But they also created a temporary connection between any two people undergoing the integration process. A neural handshake, they called it in the manual. 24 to 48 hours of shared neural activity while the system calibrated. Shared thoughts, shared sensations, shared memories. There's a complication, Cade said slowly. The interface requires a neural link during the integration process between you and me, since I'll be conducting the procedure. Lissa went very still. What does that mean? It means for about 2 days we'll be connected. Mentally, might see each other's memories, feel each other's emotions. It's temporary, but it's, he struggled for the right words, intimate. And without this interface, the legs will work but barely. You'd have maybe 30% functionality. Enough to hobble, not enough to fight or run. Lissa's jaw tightened. Cade could see the war behind her eyes. Pride versus pragmatism. Cultural programming versus survival instinct. If I allow this, she said carefully, and you see my memories of Talon Ridge, what then? Then I know the truth, one way or another. And if the truth is that I ordered the ambush, that I specifically targeted your unit, because intelligence said you were carrying high-value equipment, Cade felt his hands curl into fists, forced them to relax. Did you behind? Yes. The word hung between them like a blade. But I also ordered it that prisoners be taken alive and treated according to the Accords. Lissa continued, her voice steady. I also countermanded a superior's order to execute wounded captives. I also specifically requested that all prisoners be sent to standard processing facilities, not black sites. Your superior, Cade said, pieces clicking together. General Koros Ven. Lissa's eyes widened slightly. You know the name. Everyone knows the name. The butcher of 3 colonies. Yeah, I know him. He wanted to make examples of your people. I refused. It cost me any hope of further advancement, but I refused. Cade studied her face looking for deception, found only exhaustion and a strange kind of defiance. Why tell me this now? Because if we do this neural interface, you will see it anyway. Better you know before you decide whether to help me. Cade looked at the machine, then at Lissa, then at his own hands. Hands that had held his brother's service photo every night for 4 years. Hands that had failed to pull Elias out of that ambush. Hands that might finally find a way to make things right. All right, he said, let's do it. The procedure took 2 hours to set up. Cade had performed field surgeries before patched-up wounds that should have been fatal kept Marines alive through sheer stubborn will and medical training. But this was different, more delicate, more invasive. The fabrication unit built the prosthetics while Cade prepped the neural interface. The legs emerged from the machine like something from a fever dream. Sleek black polymer that mimicked muscle structure, reinforced joints that could handle impacts. Human bones would shatter under feet, designed for both combat and civilian use. Beautiful in a way, terrible in another. Lissa watched the process in silence, her face an unreadable mask. Cade wondered what she was thinking, if she was afraid, if Aelari even felt fear the way humans did. This is going to hurt, he said as he positioned the first prosthetic. The neural integration process is intense. I have endured pain before. Not like this. This is your nervous system learning to accept something foreign. Your brain will fight it. The interface has to override those signals. Just do it. Cade attached the first leg. The prosthetics connection ports aligned with the neural terminals in Lissa's cauterized stumps technology, interfacing with biology in ways that still seemed like magic despite the science behind it. He activated the integration sequence. Lissa's scream echoed through the abandoned facility. Cade felt it hit him like a physical blow. Not the sound, but something deeper. The neural interface was already forming, creating pathways between their minds. He felt phantom pain in legs he still had, felt Lissa's agony as if it were his own. He gritted his teeth and attached the second prosthetic. Another scream. This one took longer to fade. Then silence. Lissa was breathing hard, her pale skin shining with sweat. The prosthetics lay still, waiting for the neural pathways to form. Cade could see muscle impulses trying to fire her brain, attempting to communicate with limbs that weren't responding yet. How long? She managed. System says 12 hours for basic integration, 24 for full control, 48 for complete calibration. And the neural link, already forming. Can you feel it? Lissa closed her eyes. Cade saw her face shift, emotions flickering across it like shadows. Then her eyes snapped open and locked onto his. I can feel your guilt, she whispered. It is crushing. How do you carry such weight? Practice, Cade said, his voice rough. What else can you feel? Determination, anger, fear. She tilted her head, and underneath it all, hope. You truly believe you can find your brother. I have to. Even after 4 years, the statistical probability of a prisoner surviving that long. I don't care about statistics. A memory flashed across Cade's mind, sudden and vivid, but it wasn't his memory. He saw the ambush at Talon Ridge from a different angle through Aelari eyes, saw his own unit pinned down, saw the desperate defense, saw himself screaming into his comm, begging for extraction, saw the order come down from Koros to execute prisoners, saw Lissa refuse, saw her demotion on the spot, the shame in her fellow officers' eyes, the knowledge that her career had just ended, and saw her order the prisoners loaded onto transports anyway alive and relatively unharmed. You saved them, Cade breathed, as many as you could. Lissa's expression was pained. Not all. Koros had some executed before I could intervene. Their deaths are on my conscience, as the survivors are perhaps the only honor I have left. Another memory surfaced, this one from Cade. The moment he'd received the order to fall back from Talon Ridge. The moment he'd looked back and seen Elias surrounded, going down under weight of numbers. The moment he'd chosen orders over blood. Lissa gasped. You see him, she said, every night, in your dreams. Yeah. He calls your name. Yeah. And you run, every time you run. Cade's jaw clenched. Yeah. They sat in silence, two warriors bound by trauma and technology, seeing each other's failures reflected like mirrors. A tremor shook the facility. Dust rained from the ceiling. Cade's combat instincts flared, and he felt Lissa tense through their connection. Another tremor stronger this time. Seismic activity, Lissa said. This region is unstable. That is why the research station was abandoned. How unstable? A section of ceiling collapsed 3 rooms away, the crash echoing through the empty corridors. Extremely. Cade helped Lissa to her feet. The prosthetics responded sluggishly, not yet integrated enough for smooth movement. She swayed and he caught her, their neural link flaring with shared vertigo. We need to move deeper inside, he said. The outer chambers are too exposed. Without asking permission, he lifted her again. This time she wrapped her arms around his neck and without protest pragmatism overriding pride in the face of imminent burial. They navigated the twisting corridors following emergency lighting that flickered with each tremor. Behind them, Cade could hear sections of the station collapsing. In front, darkness waited. He found a chamber that looked like it had once been some kind of clean room, reinforced walls designed to protect delicate equipment. More importantly, it had only one entrance and no windows. Easy to defend, hard to escape from. Cade set Lissa down and immediately started checking the structural integrity. Through their link, he felt her doing the same, her tactical mind, cataloging exits and defensive positions despite her condition. We could be trapped here for days, she said, or hours if the next quake brings the whole place down. You have a gift for encouraging thoughts. Cade barked a laugh despite himself. It's a talent. The tremors continued sporadic but intense. Cade set up what supplies he had, rationing water and nutrition bars. Enough for maybe 3 days if they were careful. The prosthetics would continue their integration process regardless of whether they were buried alive or not. Night fell outside, though they couldn't see it in their reinforced tomb. The temperature dropped and Cade activated a portable heater. They sat across from each other in the dim light, the neural link between them growing stronger by the hour. Tell me about your brother, Lissa said suddenly. Cade looked up surprised. Why tired? Because I am trapped in a collapsing building with a human who saved his enemy's life, and I would like to understand why. And because, she paused. Through this link, I feel your love for him. It is powerful, pure. I have never felt anything quite like it. Cade was quiet for a long moment. Then he started talking. He told her about growing up on a frontier colony where the war was just a distant news feed, about Elias 3 years younger following Cade everywhere like a shadow, about their grandfather's stories of military service, the old man's insistence that honor mattered more than orders when the two conflicted, about joining the military together, Cade as a medic because he wanted to protect people, Elias following the same path because he wanted to be like his brother, about Talon Ridge and the choice that had broken the Merrick family oath. Through it all, the neural link carried his emotions in ways words never could. Lissa felt his love for Elias, his crushing guilt, his desperate hope that somehow his brother had survived. And Cade felt her response. Not pity, understanding, shared pain. She had siblings too, he learned through fragmentary memories. Had lost one to an early battle in the war. Knew the specific agony of survivor's guilt. We are more alike than different, Lissa said softly. Our people fight because we are told we are enemies. But we bleed the same. We mourn the same. Yeah, another tremor shook the room. This one lasted longer, and they heard a massive crash somewhere in the distance. Part of their prison had just become more permanent. Lissa's prosthetics twitched. The integration was progressing. Cade could feel phantom sensations through the link, like his own legs were going numb and reawakening. Can you move them? He asked. She concentrated, and the black polymer limbs shifted. Slow, uncoordinated, but movement. She looked down at them with wonder and uncertainty. Strange, she murmured. I can feel them, but they are not mine, not yet. Give it time. Time we may not have. She met his eyes. If we are buried here, if we do not survive, I want you to know that I am grateful. You showed me mercy when you had every reason for vengeance. Everyone deserves a chance. Your culture believes that. Mine does not. We believe in justice, not mercy. Maybe that's why you're losing the war. Lissa's laugh was sharp and unexpected. Perhaps you are right. Days blurred together in their underground prison. The tremors came and went, water ran low, nutrition bars were carefully rationed. And through it all, the neural link grew stronger, more intrusive, more complete. Cade saw Lissa's childhood in a noble Elari house, the pressure to be perfect, the shame of any weakness. Saw her rise through military ranks through sheer determination only to throw it away by refusing an order she knew was wrong. Lissa saw Cade's struggles with PTSD, the nightmares that made sleep a battlefield, the times he'd put his sidearm to his temple, and only his brother's memory had stayed his hand. They saw each other's kills, each enemy they'd taken down, each life they'd saved, each person they'd failed. And somewhere in that forced intimacy, something shifted. The enemy became a person. The person became something close to a friend, not through romance or attraction, but through the simple act of truly seeing another soul and recognizing the common thread of humanity, or whatever the Ilaria equivalent of humanity was. On the third day, Lysa stood. Her prosthetics moved smoothly now, responding to neural commands, as if they'd always been part of her. She took a step, then another, then a series of movements that looked almost like a combat kata, testing range of motion and balance. "How do they feel?" Kate asked. "Like they are mine," Lysa said, wonder in her voice. "Like I was born with them." She looked at her hands, then at her new legs, then at Cade. "Your technology is remarkable. You're adapting faster than expected. Must be that Ilari physiology. Or perhaps I am simply motivated. I dislike helplessness." Another tremor hit, but this one felt different. Less violent, more distant. Then they heard something they hadn't heard in days, the sound of shifting rubble. Not collapse. Clearance. Cade and Lyssa exchanged a glance. Through their link, they shared the same thought: time to move. They gathered the meager supplies and approached the chamber's entrance. The corridor beyond was still intact, though partially blocked. But beyond the blockage, Cade could see light. Real light, not emergency strips. They climbed over debris and squeezed through gaps in the rubble. The neural link made them move in sync, anticipating each other's needs without speaking. When Lysa's prosthetic caught on a piece of rebar, Cade knew to stop before she said anything. When Cade's rifle snagged on twisted metal, Lyssa was already reaching back to free it. They emerged into what remained of the medical bay. The ceiling had partially collapsed, creating a ramp of debris leading up and out. Sunlight streamed through the gap, warm and orange, and impossibly welcome. Cade went first, testing each foothold. Lyssa followed, her new legs gripping and balancing with inhuman precision. They climbed in silence, focused on the simple act of survival. At the top, crimson wastes stretched out before them. The battlefield was empty now, bodies removed or buried by wind-driven sand. The war had moved on. The planet didn't care. Lyssa stood beside Cade, testing her balance on uneven ground. Her prosthetics adjusted automatically, maintaining stability in a way biological legs never could. She took a few experimental steps, then broke into a run, her movements becoming smoother with each stride. She was faster than before, stronger. The cybernetics gave her an edge her natural physiology had lacked. She returned to where Cade stood, barely winded. "I could become accustomed to this," she said. "You'll terrify your people." "Good." Cade checked his bearings. The twin moons were visible in the sky, their positions giving him a rough sense of direction. The Terran evac point would be south and east. Ilari territory was north and west. He turned to Lyssa. "Deal's still on the table. You help me find my brother, I get you back to your people alive." Lyssa was quiet for a moment, and through their link, Cade felt conflict. Duty warring with something else. The neural connection was supposed to fade after the integration finished, but it was still strong, still showing him her thoughts in impressionistic flashes. Finally, she spoke. "I will help you find your brother, but not because of our deal." "Then why?" She met his eyes, and Cade saw something in them he hadn't seen before. Determination, purpose, maybe even hope. "Because I have spent 4 years following orders that led to horror. Because I have watched my people commit atrocities in the name of racial purity. Because I am tired of being a weapon aimed by those who have forgotten what honor means." She gestured at her prosthetic legs. "You gave me back my mobility. Let me give you back your brother. And perhaps together we can give both our people to something better than this endless war." Cade felt the sincerity through their link, felt the weight of her conviction, felt the shift from enemy to ally to something he didn't have words for yet. He extended his hand. "Partners." Lyssa looked at the offered hand for a long moment. Then she clasped it, her grip strong despite the feminine delicacy of her fingers. "Partners," she agreed. They stood together on the ruins of a battlefield, two warriors from opposite sides of a war, bound by technology and trauma, and a shared goal. The neural link between them pulsed with possibility. Somewhere out there, Elias might still be alive, and Cade finally had a chance to keep the promise he'd broken 4 years ago. The first step of a very long journey had just been taken. 4 months had changed everything. The safe house was a converted mining outpost on the edge of the neutral zone, a strip of territory neither side claimed, but both used for purposes they didn't discuss in official channels. Cade stood at the window watching sand devils spin across the empty expanse between human and Alari territory. Behind him, Lissa moved through a combat sequence that would have impressed any drill instructor in the Terran Alliance. Her legs blurred with speed, transitioning from defensive stances to offensive strikes with fluid precision. The advanced polymer gleamed in the harsh morning light, streaming through gaps in the corrugated metal walls. She'd become something more than she was before. Faster, stronger, deadlier. Genahuen, Cade said without turning around. Lissa reset. Her breathing was controlled efficient. The sequence began again, this time incorporating the Terran close quarters combat techniques Cade had taught her over the past weeks. Alari grace merged with human brutality, creating something hybrid, something new. The neural link had faded 3 months ago, exactly as predicted, but the connection it had forged remained in other ways. Cade could read her body language like text. She anticipated his movements before he made them. They'd become a two-person unit operating with the efficiency of a squad that had trained together for years. Muscle memory and shared experience, not mysticism, but effective nonetheless. Better, Cade said as she finished. You're trusting them completely now. Lissa grabbed a canteen and drank deeply. They are stronger than my original legs ever were. I can jump higher, run faster, kick with enough force to dent armor plating. She flexed 1-foot servos, humming softly. My people would call me abomination. I find I prefer the term improved. Cade turned from the window. 4 months of living rough had worn them both down to essentials. His face was leaner, harder. Lissa's silver-white hair was cut short now, practical rather than decorative. They looked like what they were, soldiers on an impossible mission. The walls of the safe house were covered in maps, intelligence reports, intercepted communications. Red strings connected names and locations in a web that had taken months to construct. At the center of it all, a single word written in Cade's handwriting, Eliam. Anything new? Lissa asked, moving to stand beside him. Cade pointed to a notation he'd added that morning. Signal intercept from Thessia. She's confirmed movement of high-value prisoners to a facility in the HFY Mountains. Designation Site 17. Vex's territory. Yeah. Senator Thane Vex was a name that appeared in too many dark corners of the war. Officially, she was a vocal hawk in the Terran Senate, pushing for total victory at any cost. Unofficially, intelligence suggested she had financial interests in prolonging the conflict. Weapons contracts, medical supplies, reconstruction, rights to conquered territories, and now apparently illegal research facilities. Thessia also sent this. Cade pulled up an image on a battered datapad. It showed the facade of a mountain facility, all stark concrete and defensive emplacements. Thermal scans show it's heavily occupied, at least 200 personnel split between human and Alari. Lissa's expression darkened. Working together, Koros and Vex. Looks that way. They'd pieced together the conspiracy over the past months. General Koros Ven, the butcher of 3 colonies, had a counterpart on the human side. Together, they'd been orchestrating attacks designed to inflame tensions, prevent peace talks, keep the war machine grinding forward. And somewhere in that machine, Elias Merrick was caught. When do we move? Lissa asked. Cassian's due here at noon. We coordinate with him and Thessia plan the infiltration. Whoosh, Cade checked his rifle for the 100th time, a nervous habit he couldn't break. This is it. If Elias isn't there, he is there. Lissa's hand touched his arm briefly, a gesture of reassurance. I know it. Cade wanted to ask how. The neural link was gone, but maybe some connections ran deeper than technology. The sound of an approaching vehicle broke the moment. Cade moved to the window, weapon ready, then relaxed as he recognized the armored transport. Cassian's personal vehicle, modified with enough firepower to qualify as a light tank. The man who emerged was in his early 40s with iron gray hair and the kind of face that had seen too much and somehow kept going anyway. Captain Cassian Reeve moved with the economy of motion that marked career soldiers, his uniform identifying him as Terran intelligence. He'd also been Cade's first commanding officer, the man who'd trained him as a medic, the man who'd been there the night Elias was taken. Sir, Cade said as Cassian entered the safe house. Drop the Sir, Merrick. I'm operating off book here. Cassian's eyes moved to Lissa assessment without hostility. Commander Tharvin, your reputation precedes you. As does yours, Captain Reeve. Lissa inclined her head slightly. Though I confess I am surprised to find a Terran intelligence officer aiding a deserter and his companion. Companion, Cassian repeated with a slight smile. That's diplomatic. He dropped a case on the table and opened it, revealing weapons ID chips and tactical gear. I'm helping because what's happening at Site 17 is an abomination that violates every treaty both sides have signed, and because I owe Kate a debt I can never repay. Talon Ridge, Lissa said quietly. Yeah, I was the one who gave the order to retreat. Left his brother behind because Command said the equipment we were carrying was more valuable than the lives we'd lose in an extended engagement. Cassian's jaw tightened. I've regretted that order every day since. Cade felt old anger stir, then settle. He'd worked through it over the months. Had come to understand that Cassian had been following orders just like Cade had. They were both cogs in a machine that chewed up brothers and spit out survivors. What's the tactical situation? Cade asked, redirecting to safer ground. Cassian pulled up holographic displays. Site 17 is built into a mountain complex. 3 levels, heavy security, minimal windows. Main entrance is a choke point designed to funnel attackers into kill zones. Secondary access through maintenance tunnels, but those are monitored and trapped. Aerial insertion, anti-air coverage makes that suicide, and the facility has its own shield generators. We'd need a full assault force to crack it. Cassian zoomed in on a section of the mountain. But there's another option. Old mining shaft sealed off decades ago. Thessia's people have been mapping it. Leads directly into the lower levels. Lissa leaned forward, studying the route. Confined space. No retreat if we're discovered. We would be trapped like vermin in a tunnel. Yeah, but it's the only way in that doesn't involve announcing ourselves to every guard in the facility. Cassian looked at them both. This is a 2-person insertion. 3 maximum. Small team surgical strike. Get in, locate the prisoner, get out. When? Cade asked. Tonight. Thessia's arranged for a systems malfunction that'll take the security grid offline for exactly 43 minutes. After that, we're on our own. Cade and Lissa exchanged a glance. 4 months of preparation had led to this moment. We're ready, Cade said. Cassian nodded. Good, because there's something else you need to know. He pulled up a classified document, redacted text visible in fragments. Thessia managed to extract partial records from Site 17. The facility isn't just holding prisoners. It's conducting experiments, genetic modification, cross-species hybridization. Lissa went very still. Cade felt his stomach drop. They're trying to create human Alari hybrids, Cassian continued, soldiers who combine the best traits of both species, enhanced strength, faster healing, neural compatibility with advanced AI systems. The ultimate weapon. That is impossible, Lissa said, but her voice lacked conviction. Our species are too genetically different. Every attempt at hybridization has failed. Every natural attempt, Cassian corrected. But with forced gene splicing, viral vector insertion, cybernetic augmentation, Vex's scientists think they've cracked it. And your brother, he looked at Cade, is apparently one of their test subjects. The room spun. Cade gripped the table edge, knuckles white. Elias, changed, modified, turned into something other than human. How long has he been there? Cade forced out. Records suggest he was transferred to Site 17 18 months ago, before that standard POW facility. But once Vex started this program, Cassian trailed off, the implications clear. 18 months of experimentation, of forced modification, of torture dressed up as science. Lissa's hand touched his shoulder. When he looked at her, he saw his own horror reflected in those ice-blue eyes. We will get him out, she said. Whatever they have done to him, we will get him out. The mining shaft smelled of rust and ancient earth. Cade descended first, a rappelling line whispering through his gloved hands. His helmet light cut through absolute darkness, illuminating rock walls that bore the scars of industrial excavation from a time before the war. Above him, Lissa followed with the grace of a spider, her prosthetic legs finding purchase on surfaces that would have challenged biological limbs. Cassian remained topside, monitoring security feeds and ready to provide extraction if things went sideways. They reached the bottom after a descent that seemed to take hours but was probably only 20 minutes. The shaft opened into a horizontal tunnel, reinforced with metal supports that groaned ominously as they moved past. Map says this connects to the facility's lower maintenance level, Cade whispered into his comm. His voice sounded flat in the enclosed space absorbed by stone and darkness. Lissa moved up beside him, her movements silent. She'd adapted to the prosthetics so completely that Cade sometimes forgot they weren't original equipment. They navigated the tunnel using ancient rail tracks as guides, stepping over debris and pools of stagnant water. Twice they heard the rumble of machinery above them, the facility's life support systems churning through their cycles. The tunnel terminated in a sealed door, heavy metal with a digital lock that glowed faint red in the darkness. Thessia said the security malfunction should have opened this, Cade said, trying his override code. The lock blinked red. Denied. We are too early, Lissa said, checking her chronometer. 30 seconds. They waited in the darkness, every second stretching like hours. Cade's finger rested on his rifle's trigger, guard not quite ready to fire but close. Old combat habits. The lock blinked green. The door opened with a hiss of equalizing pressure. Beyond it, the facility's lower level spread out in harsh fluorescent light. Maintenance corridors empty at this hour stretched in 4 directions. Cade consulted the map Thessia had provided. Detention area is 2 levels up east wing. We take the service elevator, avoid the main corridors. They moved quickly through the maze of passages, 2 shadows flitting past pipes and junction boxes and warning signs in 3 languages. The facility was a monument to paranoia, security cameras on every corner, biometric scanners at every checkpoint. But Thessia had done her job well. Each scanner they approached flashed green, accepting the false credentials she'd uploaded. Each camera panned away at precisely the right moment. 43 minutes. That's all they had. The service elevator was a cage of metal mesh designed for moving equipment, not people. It shuddered and groaned as they ascended, the sound loud enough to make Cade's teeth ache. 2nd level, 3rd level. The doors opened onto a corridor that looked different from the maintenance levels. Cleaner, more clinical. This was where the real work of the facility happened, and where Cade heard it for the first time, a scream. Human, male, agonized in a way that bypassed rational thought and went straight to the primal brainstem. Elias. Cade was moving before conscious thought caught up, Lysa right behind him. The screaming led them through winding corridors, past a sealed door with observation windows that showed empty cells. This was a prison, yes, but also a laboratory. They found the source in a room labeled Testing Chamber 7. Through the reinforced window, Cade saw his brother. Except it wasn't his brother. Not entirely. The man strapped to the examination table had Elias's face, his build, his scars from old injuries. But his skin had taken on a faint iridescence, catching the light with colors that didn't exist in human pigmentation. His hair had streaks of silver white running through the brown. And when his eyes opened during a gap in the screaming, they showed Aelari pupils vertical slits instead of rounds. 2 scientists stood nearby, human and Aelari, working side by side, monitoring displays that showed biological data in complex cascades. Rejection response increasing, the human scientist said. Administer suppressants. This is the 14th attempt, the Aelari responded. Perhaps we should consider terminating this subject and moving to fresh stock. Cade's world contracted to a single point of rage. He kicked the door open. His rifle came up. The scientist turned, mouths opening in shock. Step away from him, Cade said, his voice utterly flat. Now. The human scientist reached for an alarm. Lissa put a plasma bolt through the control panel before his hand made contact. The Aelari raised her hand slowly. You are making a mistake, the Aelari scientist said, her voice professionally calm despite the weapons pointed at her head. This subject is property of the Joint Research Initiative. Removing him will try... I said step away. Cade moved closer, and something in his eyes made both scientists back toward the wall. Lissa moved to the examination table where Elias thrashed against restraints, his modified body fighting sedatives that should have kept him unconscious. Up close, the changes were more pronounced. His muscles had been enhanced cords of tissue visible beneath skin that looked like it couldn't decide what species it belonged to. Elias, Cade said, holstering his rifle to work on the restraints. It's me. It's Cade. I'm getting you out. Elias's eyes focused on him. For a moment there was recognition. Then his face twisted into something feral, and he lunged despite the partially released restraints. The punch caught Cade in the ribs, enhanced strength driving the air from his lungs and sending him sprawling. Elias roared a sound that combined human vocal cords with Aelari harmonics, creating something that belonged in nightmares. Lissa stepped between them as Elias tore free of the remaining restraints. Stand down, she commanded in Aelari, her voice carrying harmonics of authority. Elias paused. His nostrils flared, scenting the air. His vertical pupils fixed on Lysa with predatory intensity. You smell like prey, he growled, the words barely intelligible through a throat that didn't quite work right anymore. Like human and Aelari, like... His head tilted, confusion breaking through the aggression. Lissa remained perfectly still, and Cade saw her hand move to her abdomen in a gesture so quick he almost missed it. Then understanding hit him like a physical blow. Lissa was pregnant. The realization came with fragmentary memories from their time trapped in the research station. Nights when the neural link had made them so aware of each other that boundaries had dissolved. Moments of connection that neither had spoken of afterward filed away as necessary survival adaptations in an impossible situation. But biology didn't care about protocol or propriety or species differences. Elias's aggression faded as he continued to scent the air. Offspring, he said, the word coming clearer now. You carry offspring, human and Aelari, natural hybrid. Yes, Lissa said quietly, and you are experiencing rejection because they are trying to force what should occur naturally. Elias looked at his own hands, seeing the mottled skin, the two long fingers that ended in something between nails and claws. What have they done to me? Nothing that can't be undone, Cade said, climbing to his feet despite the stabbing pain in his ribs. But we need to move. Now. Alarms began to wail. Their 43 minutes were up. Cassian's voice crackled over the comm. Security's locked onto you. Multiple teams converging on your location. You need to extract immediately. Copy that, Cade said. He looked at the two scientists cowering against the wall. Where's the data? All the research on the hybridization program. The human scientist's eyes flicked to a terminal in the corner. Lissa moved to it, her fingers flying across the interface. Encrypted, she said, but I can access it. She pulled a data spike from her belt and jammed it into the port. Downloading now. Elias stood unsteadily, his modified body struggling with coordination. Why are you here? He asked Cade, and for the first time the voice sounded like the brother Cade remembered. They told me you were dead, that everyone from Talon Ridge was dead. They lied, Cade said simply, and I came because I made a promise. You left me before. The words hit like bullets. Cade forced himself to meet his brother's eyes, those alien pupils in a familiar face. I did, and I've spent 4 years trying to make it right. He extended his hand. I'm here now. Let me keep the promise this time. Elias stared at the offered hand for a long moment. Then he took it, his grip too strong, his skin too cold, but his intent unmistakably human. Download complete, Lissa announced, and I found something else. The program isn't just about creating soldiers. They are testing to see if natural hybrids are viable, if human and Aelari can reproduce without genetic engineering. She pulled up files, medical reports, genetic analyses. Cade saw his brother's name repeated dozens of times, each entry documenting another failed attempt to force hybridization through scientific intervention. And then he saw another name, Project Genesis. They know, Lissa breathed, her face pale. Vex and Koros both know that natural hybrids are possible. They have been suppressing the research because, she scrolled through the files, because if the public knew that our species could interbreed naturally, it would undermine the entire war narrative. We are not separate species. We are genetic cousins. The implications crashed over Cade like a wave. The war had been fought on the premise that humans and Aelari were fundamentally incompatible. That coexistence was impossible. That one species had to dominate for either to survive. But if that was a lie, this is why they will hunt us, Lissa said, her hand moving protectively over her abdomen. Our child proves what they have been hiding. She is evidence they cannot allow to exist. She, Cade asked. Lissa nodded. Aelari can sense the gender of their offspring early. It is a girl, and she will be the first natural-born hybrid in recorded history. Explosions rocked the facility. Cassian's voice came through urgent. They are trying to seal you in. Move now or you are not getting out. Cade grabbed Elias's arm. Can you run? I can do more than that. Elias's voice carried grim humor. They enhanced everything, strength, speed, healing, made me into their weapon. His modified eyes met Cade's. Let me show them what a mistake that was. They burst from the testing chamber into chaos. Security teams had arrived, a mix of human Marines and Aelari warriors working together. The sight of species cooperation might have been hopeful in another context. Here it was just another nightmare. Elias moved like liquid death. His modified body combined human aggression with Aelari grace, enhanced muscles propelling him through the corridors faster than normal humans could track. He tore through the security teams with bare hands, his gene-spliced strength turning armor into foil. Cade and Lissa provided covering fire, their movements coordinated from months of training together. They'd become a unit without needing words, each covering the other's blind spots, anticipating reactions, moving as one. They fought their way back to the service elevator, Elias clearing the path, while Cade and Lissa handled the ranged threats. The elevator cage was shot to pieces, so they took the stairs, descending at a dead run, while pursuit thundered behind them. The lower levels were filling with smoke as fire suppression systems activated. Through the haze, Kate could see the mining tunnel entrance ahead. Almost there. Almost free. Then Elias stopped. "Go," he said, his voice suddenly clear and calm. "What?" Cade grabbed his brother's arm. "No, we go together." Elias looked at him with those alien eyes, and Cade saw something human swimming in the modified depths. Understanding. Acceptance. Peace. I looked at the files while Lissa was downloading, Elias said. Saw what they did to me. The genetic damage is too extensive. Even if we escape, I'm dying. Days, maybe weeks. He smiled, and it was his old smile despite everything. But I can give you time. Elias, no. Yes. Elias gripped Cade's shoulders, his enhanced strength making the gesture gentle despite its power. You came back for me. That matters more than you know. You kept the promise. He looked at Lysa. Take care of him. And your daughter. Make sure she grows up in a world better than this. He turned before Cade could respond and ran back toward the pursuing security forces. Elias! The explosion that followed shook the entire facility. Elias had found the main power reactor, Cade realized numbly, had overloaded it using knowledge from his engineering training, turning himself into a living bomb. The facility's lights died, emergency systems kicked in, but the damage was catastrophic. Structural supports groaned as sections began to collapse. Lissa dragged Cade toward the tunnel. He moved like a puppet disconnected from his body. Behind them, Site 17 ate itself, the mountain facility crumbling, as fires spread through levels and secondary explosions tore through critical systems. They made the tunnel, made the rappelling lines, made the surface where Cassian waited with transport engines already running. Cade collapsed in the passenger compartment as the vehicle accelerated away. Through the rear viewport, he watched Site 17 disappear in a plume of smoke and fire. Elias was gone. Truly gone this time. But he'd chosen it, had made the sacrifice not because he was abandoned, but because he was loved. Because his brother had come back for him against impossible odds. Because the promise had been kept, even if the outcome wasn't what either had hoped. Lissa sat beside Cade in the darkness, her hand finding his. Through the touch, he felt her own grief, her understanding, her shared pain. He saved us, she said quietly. He destroyed all their research, set back their program, years, maybe permanently. He's gone. Yes, but not forgotten. Never forgotten. Her other hand moved to her abdomen. I will tell our daughter about the uncle who sacrificed himself so she could be born. About the man who proved that honor and love matter more than genetics or species. Cade couldn't speak. Could only hold on to Lissa's hand like an anchor while grief threatened to drown him. Cassian drove in silence, giving them space to mourn. Hours later, back at the safe house, Lissa showed Cade the data she'd stolen. Genetic analyses, experimental results. And buried in the files a report that confirmed what Elias had discovered, natural human-Alari hybrids were not only possible but genetically superior to forced hybridization. Stronger, more stable, more viable. The war's foundational lie exposed in clinical detail. They will come for us, Lissa said, when Vex and Koros realize what we have, what our child represents. Let them come, Cade said, his voice empty. I've got nothing left to lose. You have everything to lose. Lissa's hand covered her abdomen. We both do. Our daughter deserves a chance to live, to grow up in a world where she is not hunted for what she is. Cade looked at her, really looked. Saw the Alari warrior who'd become his partner. Saw the mother protecting her unborn child. Saw the woman who'd shared his mind and his pain and had somehow become the most important person in his life. Not through romance, through shared purpose, through mutual respect forged in fire and loss. Then we make that world, he said, whatever it takes. Whatever it takes, Lissa agreed. Outside, the twin moons rose over crimson wastes, pale and distant and uncaring. The war continued. Vex and Koros still pulled their strings. The conspiracy still turned. But somewhere in the darkness, a hybrid child grew. Evidence of what both sides desperately wanted to hide. And two warriors, human and Alari, prepared to protect that evidence with everything they had. The hunt was over. The real war was about to begin. 4 months could be a lifetime. Lissa stood at the edge of the temple ruins, her silhouette sharp against the setting sun. 9 months pregnant, she should have been somewhere safe, somewhere protected. Instead, she was here on Crimson Wastes, where it had all begun. The precursor temple rose from the desert like a skeletal hand reaching toward uncaring stars. Ancient stone, weathered by millennia of wind and war, formed archways that defied conventional physics. Symbols covered every surface, writing from a civilization that had died long before humans or Ilari had learned to make fire. Cade watched her from the shadow of a broken column. Her hand rested on her swollen abdomen, a gesture that had become unconscious over the months. The advanced prosthetics that had saved her life now supported the weight of two. She is active today, Lissa said without turning around. I think she knows something is happening. Babies don't know anything, Cade replied, moving to stand beside her. They just exist. Alari children can sense emotional states even in the womb. She feels my anxiety. Lissa finally looked at him, those ice blue eyes reflecting the dying light. She feels my fear. Cade had no answer for that. He checked his rifle again, a habit born from too many ambushes, too many moments when preparedness meant the difference between life and death. The temple compound spread below them a maze of broken walls and shattered plazas. Cassian and Thessia had chosen this location for the meeting with moderate leaders from both sides. Neutral ground, sacred ground, the kind of place where truces were supposed to mean something. Cade didn't believe in sacred ground anymore. Only in what you could defend. Movement? Thessia's voice came through the comm, professional and calm. 3 vehicles approaching from the northwest. Terran markings. Copy that, Cassian responded. A Hilari delegation arriving from the east. Right on schedule. Lissa's hand tightened on Cade's arm. Something is wrong. What? I do not know, but I feel it. Her eyes scanned the temple ruins with tactical precision. We should not be here. Before Cade could respond, the world exploded. The vehicles erupted in plasma fire, their armored hulls peeling back like foil. Figures stumbled from the wreckage, moderates from both sides, the politicians and generals who'd been brave enough to consider peace. Then the kill teams arrived. They poured from hidden positions in the ruins, a coordinated strike force of human marines and Alari warriors. Not the conscripts or the believers. These were professionals, mercenaries. The kind of soldiers who fought for credits, not causes. Koros and Vex had set the trap perfectly. Ambush! Cassian's voice cut through the comm. All units defensive positions. Protect the delegates. Cade pulled Lissa toward cover as plasma bolts seared the air where they'd been standing. His rifle came up, targeting threats with muscle memory older than conscious thought. 2 shots, 2 bodies dropping. Around them, what should have been a peace meeting transformed into a massacre. The moderate leaders tried to run, tried to find shelter in the ancient ruins. The kill teams cut them down with professional efficiency. No hesitation, no mercy. Just the cold calculus of murder, dressed up as military necessity. Thessia fought like a demon, her command of Ayalari combat techniques, buying precious seconds for survivors to scatter. Cassian moved with the economy of a man who'd seen too many battles, each shot deliberate, each movement calculated. But they were outnumbered 3-1. Cade and Lissa fell back to a defensible position, a half-collapsed shrine with walls thick enough to stop plasma fire. Lissa's movements were slower now, hampered by pregnancy, but her aim was perfect. Each shot from her sidearm found a target. They are not trying to capture, she observed, her voice clinical despite the chaos. This is extermination. Yeah, Cade dropped an empty magazine and slapped in a fresh one. Koros and Vex are tying up loose ends. Anyone who wants peace dies today. A contraction hit Lissa like a physical blow. She gasped, doubling over, one hand braced against the ancient stone. No, Cade said the word more prayer than statement. Not now, not here. I do not believe our daughter cares about timing, Lissa managed through gritted teeth. The contraction paused, leaving her pale and shaking. That was the 3rd one in the last hour. How far apart? 20 minutes, then 15. That one was perhaps 10. Cade's medical training kicked in despite the battle raging around them. 10-minute intervals meant active labor. Meant they had maybe an hour before the baby came ready or not. Cassian, he called into the comm. We need extraction. Now. Working on it, came the terse reply. But we're pinned down. The kill teams have anti-air coverage. Anything that flies gets shot out of the sky. Another contraction. Lissa's fingers dug into Cade's arm hard enough to leave bruises. Her breathing came in controlled bursts, discipline applied to biological imperative. Through the shrine's broken walls, Cade could see the battle shifting. The kill teams were professional, but they weren't prepared for the desperation of people fighting for their lives. Survivors clustered into defensive groups, human and Ilari shoulder to shoulder, united by the simple arithmetic of survival. A figure emerged from the smoke and chaos. General Koros Ven, the butcher of 3 colonies, walked through the battlefield like a man inspecting his garden. His silver armor bore the scars of a dozen campaigns, and his face held the kind of certainty that came from believing absolutely in one's righteousness. Behind him, Senator Thane Vex moved with the predatory grace of someone who'd never personally pulled a trigger, but had ordered countless others to do so. Her civilian clothes looked wrong in the combat zone, a reminder that some people fought wars from behind desks. Enough! Koros's voice boomed across the compound, amplified by his armor's speakers. Cease fire! Let me address the survivors. The shooting stopped. An eerie silence descended, broken only by the crackle of flames and the moans of the wounded. Koros surveyed the carnage with satisfaction. You see now the futility of your peace fantasies. There can be no coexistence between human and Aelari. We are fundamentally incompatible. One species must dominate, or both will perish. Lies! Thessia called out, her voice carrying across the ruins. She stood in the open, defiant, despite the weapons trained on her. We have proof. Scientific evidence that our species can coexist, that we are genetically compatible. Vex laughed, the sound harsh and mocking. Evidence that we've worked very hard to suppress. Evidence that dies with you today. Cade felt Lysa tense beside him. Another contraction, this one stronger. She bit back a cry, refusing to show weakness even now. They are looking for us, she whispered. For our daughter. She is the evidence they cannot allow to exist. Koros's gaze swept across the ruins, systematic and thorough. We know you are here, Commander Tharvin. You and the human medic. Bring us the hybrid child, and we will make the others' deaths quick. Refuse, and everyone here suffers. Cade's hands tightened on his rifle. Every tactical bone in his body screamed at him to stay hidden, to protect Lysa and the unborn child at all costs. But Elias's last words echoed in his mind. Make sure she grows up in a world better than this. A world built on hiding wasn't better. A world where children had to be concealed because their existence threatened power structures wasn't better. A world where fear dictated every choice was just another kind of prison. I'm going out there, Cade said. That is suicide, Lysa hissed. Yeah, probably, but I didn't come this far to hide. He checked his rifle one last time. Besides, someone needs to buy you time to have this baby. Cade, he kissed her forehead, quick and chaste, a gesture of respect rather than romance. Keep her safe. That's an order. Then he stepped out of cover before she could argue. Koros's head snapped toward him, weapons tracking. Cade walked forward with his rifle lowered, non-threatening, just a man crossing a battlefield, like he had every right to be there. Sergeant Cade Merrick, Vex said, consulting a datapad. Combat medic, decorated for valor at the Battle of Ashfall Ridge, reported missing in action 4 months ago. Her smile was predatory. Imagine our surprise when we learned you'd been consorting with the enemy. Consorting, Cade repeated, stopping about 20 meters from Koros. That's one way to put it. Another would be that I saved a warrior's life because it was the right thing to do. Noble, Koros said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. And where is Commander Tharseven now? Where is the abomination she carries? Cade smiled, and there was no humor in it. Close enough. Another contraction hit Lysa in the hidden shrine. This one drove her to her knees, a cry escaping despite her best efforts. 7 minutes since the last one. Labor was accelerating. Koros heard the sound, his head cocked, triangulating. There. He gestured, and Kill team members moved toward the shrine. Cassian stepped into their path. Through me first. Thessia appeared on the other side. And me. Other survivors emerged from cover. Human and Aelari, wounded and exhausted but standing, creating a wall of bodies between the kill teams and the shrine. How touching, Vex said. United in futility, kill them all. The order hung in the air like smoke. Koros's hand went to his sidearm. His warriors raised their weapons. The human mercenaries followed suit. And then from the shrine, a sound that changed everything. A baby's cry, thin and reedy and utterly impossibly human. The kind of sound that bypassed rational thought and went straight to the primal brainstem. The sound every species hardwired for parental care recognized at a fundamental level. Vulnerability, innocence, new life entering a world of violence. Koros froze his hand on his weapon, but not drawing. His warriors hesitated, looking to him for orders that didn't come. Cade watched the general's face and saw something shift. The certainty cracked. Behind the armor, in the rank, in the ideology, a father's instinct stirred. You had a daughter, Cade said quietly, before the war. I read your file. She died in the first wave of human attacks on the Aelari colonies. Koros's jaw tightened. Do not speak of her. Why not? She was real. She mattered. Just like the child being born in that shrine matters. Another cry from the shrine, stronger now. The sound of a newborn finding its voice, announcing its existence to an indifferent universe. Cade saw tears on Koros's face. The general didn't wipe them away. My daughter was innocent, Koros said, his voice breaking. She had nothing to do with politics or territory or resources. She was 3 years old. She liked to chase pollinator insects in our garden. She laughed at everything. And she died because someone decided that Alari children were acceptable casualties in a war over mining rights, Cade continued. Because someone chose violence over peace. Because someone like you gave the order. Koros's hand trembled on his weapon. I have given many orders. I know. And every single one has brought you closer to becoming the thing you hate, the thing that killed your daughter. From the shrine, Lissa appeared. She walked slowly, cradling a bundle wrapped in Cade's jacket. Her prosthetics moved with inhuman precision, compensating for exhaustion and blood loss. Her face was pale, but her eyes burned with fierce maternal protectiveness. The baby cried again, and Lissa adjusted her hold, soothing with instincts older than civilization. Every weapon in the compound tracked her, 50 different firing solutions, all ending with mother and child dead in the dust. Koros raised his sidearm, pointed it at Lissa's head. His hand was steady despite the tears. You are an abomination, he said. You and the thing you have birthed. You prove nothing except that some lines should never be crossed. Then pull the trigger, Lissa said calmly. Kill us. Add a mother and infant to your tally. Prove once and for all that you are exactly what the humans say you are. The general's finger tightened on the trigger. Cassian started forward. Thessia moved to intervene. Cade's rifle came up, knowing he was too late, too far. Koros lowered his weapon. The movement was slow, like a man waking from a nightmare. The sidearm dropped from his hand, clattering on ancient stone. I cannot, the general whispered. I have ordered the deaths of thousands. I have burned colonies and shattered fleets. I have become the monster my people needed to win this war. He looked at the baby in Lissa's arms. But I cannot kill a child. I cannot become that. Vex moved forward, her own weapon drawn. Then I will 10. Cassian's shot took her in the shoulder, spinning her around. The senator's weapon clattered away as she fell, screaming. Arrest her, Marm. Cassian ordered the Marines, his voice carrying the weight of rank. Conspiracy to commit murder. Illegal weapons experimentation. Violation of the Accords. He looked at the kill teams. Anyone else want to try their luck? The mercenaries lowered their weapons. Without Vex's money and Koros's ideology, they were just hired guns. And hired guns understood when a contract went bad. Koros stood alone in the center of the compound, a general without an army, a father without a daughter, a man confronting the weight of his own choices. Lissa walked toward him, each step deliberate. She stopped a meter away and adjusted the bundle so Koros could see the baby's face. Arya had Cade's brown skin and Lissa's silver-white hair. Her eyes, still unfocused with newborn blindness, shifted between brown and ice blue. Human features with Alari proportions. Perfect and impossible. Her name is Arya, Lissa said. It means harmony in the old Earth languages. Light song in Alari. She met Koros's eyes. She is what we could be. Not separate species at war, but one people with common origin. The war, Koros began, then stopped. Tried again. Everything I have done was to protect my people. And you nearly destroyed them in the process, Thessia said, moving to stand beside Lissa. Protection through genocide is not protection. It is extinction by another name. Koros looked around at the carnage, at the bodies of moderates from both sides, people who'd been brave enough to imagine peace. At the survivors, human and Alari, standing together because survival had made them allies. At the baby girl whose existence proved everything he'd believed was a lie. What would you have me do, he asked, and for the first time he sounded old. Tired. Testify, Cassian said, moving forward with restraints for Vex. Tell the truth about the conspiracy, about the suppressed research, about the lies both sides have been fed to keep this war burning. They will execute me. Probably, Kate agreed, but maybe some good men die standing up instead of on their knees. Koros looked at him sharply. That is a human saying. We've got a lot of them. Picked them up over the centuries of fighting stupid wars for stupid reasons. Cade moved to Lissa's side, his hand finding hers. Figured it was time we learned from them, instead of just collecting them. The general was quiet for a long moment. Then he knelt slowly, his armor servos whining. Not in surrender, in acknowledgement. I will testify, he said. I will tell them everything, and I will accept whatever judgment comes. He looked at Arya. But I ask one thing. Let me see her sometimes, as she grows, so I can remember what I almost destroyed. Lissa considered her expression unreadable. Then she nodded. Once a year, under supervision. You may see what your choice here today protected. Koros bowed his head. Thank you. The trials took 6 months. Koros testified for 3 days straight, his voice never wavering as he detailed the conspiracy. Vex screamed threats from her cell until they gagged her. The evidence from Site 17 corroborated everything. Both sides had been lied to. Both sides had been manipulated. The war had stopped being about territory or resources years ago. It had become self-perpetuating, a machine that fed on bodies and ideology and hate. Understanding that didn't erase the dead, didn't bring back Elias or Koros's daughter, or the millions who died fighting for lies. But it was a start. 5 years later, Cade stood on the observation deck of Unity Station, watching ships come and go in the space lanes between human and Alari territory. The station itself was a joint construction, built with technologies from both species, a symbol of what cooperation could achieve. His hair had more gray now, lines around his eyes from too many nights, staying up with a child who thought sleep was optional. But when he smiled, it reached all the way to those lines. Papa? Arya's voice cut through the observation deck's ambient noise. She ran toward him with the unconscious grace of Alari genetics and the boundless energy of human childhood. Her silver-brown hair flew behind her like a banner. Cade scooped her up, grunting at the weight. 5 years old and already strong, a hybrid vigor that pediatricians were still trying to understand. Did you see Papa? The new ship from the 7th colony? It has both human and Alari crew. Her eyes shifted color as she got excited, brown to blue, and back again, a parlor trick she'd learned to control. I saw. Pretty amazing, right? When I'm big, I'm going to have a ship, and I'm going to fly everywhere and show everyone that we can be friends. Lissa appeared from the crowd, moving with the easy confidence of someone who'd long since adapted to her prosthetics. She wore ambassador's robes now instead of combat gear, though Cade knew she kept a weapons locker in their quarters. Old habits. Come, little star, she said to Arya. Uncle Cassian is waiting to take you to the cultural center. Is Aunt Thessia going to be there? Yes, and she has promised to teach you the traditional Alari greeting dance. Arya squealed with delight and wriggled free from Cade's arms. She ran off toward where Cassian waited, the older man smiling as the child barreled into his legs. Cassian and Thessia had married a year after the trials ended, symbolic union between human and Alari leadership. But watching them together, Cade knew it was more than symbol. Some partnerships were forged in fire and came out stronger, like his and Lissa's. They watched Arya disappear into the crowd, a ball of energy and optimism that seemed to infect everyone she encountered. She asked about Elias again last night, Lissa said quietly. What did you tell her? The truth. That he was a hero. That he sacrificed himself so she could be born. Lissa leaned against the observation window, her reflection ghostly in the starfield. She wants to visit his memorial. Cade had built the memorial himself with Cassian's help, a simple marker on crimson wastes near where the war had started for him. Elias's name and the words, he kept the promise. We'll take her next month, Cade said. She should know where she comes from, all of it, the good and the bad. Below them, a shuttle launched from the station, its engines flaring blue-white against the darkness. On board were 30 hybrid children heading to the new integrated school on the 6th colony, Arya's classmates. The first generation born after the truth came out. Not all of them had parents from both species. Some were full human, some were full Alari. But they were learning together, growing up without the hate that had defined their parents' generation. Do you ever regret it? Lissa asked. The choice you made that day on the battlefield. Cade thought about it, about everything that had happened since he'd found a legless Alari warrior and made the stupid, impossible decision to save her. No, he said, not for a second. Even knowing what it come on, especially knowing what it on, Elias died, making sure Arya would have a future. That matters. Maybe it's the only thing that does. Lissa's hand found his fingers interlacing. You still have nightmares. Yeah, probably always will. But they're different now, not about abandoning Elias, about remembering him, honoring what he did. They stood in companionable silence watching the stars wheel overhead. Somewhere out there, war still existed. Conflicts still erupted. Humans and Alari still had disagreements. But they talked now instead of immediately shooting. They compromised. They built things together. It wasn't perfect. Peace never was. But it was better. And better was enough. I need to go, Lissa said. Summit meeting with the outer colonies in an hour. What's the issue this time? Mining rights dispute. Some of the human companies are trying to extract from sites the Alari consider sacred. She smiled wryly. Typical. You'll work it out. You always do. She kissed his cheek, a gesture of affection that had taken years to feel natural. Pick up Arya from the cultural center at 6 and already on my schedule. Lissa left moving through the crowds with purpose and grace. People moved aside for her, human and Alaria alike, showing respect for the woman who'd become the face of integration. Cade remained at the observation window watching the stars. The universe didn't care about human drama or Alari politics or the small victories of species learning to coexist. But Cade cared. Lissa cared. Arya and her generation cared. And sometimes caring was enough. He turned from the window and headed toward the exit. There was a ceremony this afternoon honoring those who'd fallen during the war. Cade made a point of attending everyone, remembering the Khatwam, honoring the sacrifice, making sure that the peace they'd built stayed precious. Because freedom, peace, understanding, none of it came free. It was paid for in blood and tears and broken promises finally kept. And as long as Cade drew breath, he'd make sure no one forgot that. Some promises were worth everything it took to keep them. That was the legacy. That was enough.